Greetings, everybody, and welcome back for another edition of Narrative: The Road to 100 with Black AI Media. I am Cedric Scott Jr., your host, and we have an amazing guest, as always. But in this situation, it's nice because we're going to be digging into something a little bit more familiar to me in terms of education, but the importance of understanding how technology influences that, and also really tapping into what we are doing communal wise in terms of building in the space. So we have Shadeira Nesmith here, and we are going to get into the work that she's doing in terms of software and curriculum development. But I want to go ahead and just open up space for you, Shadeira, and give us a quick intro. Tell us a little bit about yourself and the work that you're doing.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, so I'm Shadeira. So I've been in the EdTech space for about 8 years now. I started off with, because people always ask me, like, what is your journey into tech? How did you get into tech? Or how did you even get into like the teaching education space of it? So I went to college. In college, I minored in information technologies. So I was able to kind of get a little bit of insight of what tech was like. I didn't really take the classes of like software development. So it wasn't the traditional route of like a computer science student or anything like that, but it was kind of like just studying hardware and software. And then I also was a communications major. So usually within communications, if anybody has taken communication classes, it's very performative. So you have to like always speak about something. You're on radio, you're on TV. And that was new to me because I was a very shy person. So to have to be able to kind of speak and kind of be on camera and be on TV or radio was kind of a lot for me. So I think during that time, I was like, I don't know, but I was like, these classes are really easy and I want to graduate. So I was like, but I need also a media that's kind of like a growing field. So that's why I picked up my IT minor. And that was probably like my third year in college that I picked it up. So I picked it up pretty late. And then from there, I was like, okay, what can I do with this? How can I expand on it? And I think there's so many opportunities now within the tech space for undergrads. So many. Every time I'm like on LinkedIn, it's like college student, Microsoft, Google, all of these things. But when I was in school, that wasn't available so much. So it was like, how do I kind of grow in this space? So my first interaction with tech and education was with Black Girls Code. They usually had workshops where they would run workshops for Black young girls ages, I would say like 8 to like 16, 18. And they would teach them how to build mobile apps, how to kind of build websites. And that was my first interaction. I was able to kind of work with them for about 3 years, just being a volunteer, working with the curriculum and different things like that. So that's kind of how I got into that space. And I was like, I really enjoy this. And I told people all the time, I was like, they'd be like, oh, what do you want to do and different things. And I was like, I'll do any job, but ever be a teacher. So it's so funny that I'm in this space of education and I love it so much because the impact that it has on so many students, especially me teaching something that's not so traditional or just something that's really of a higher level is like really important to me. So I've been doing that for 8 years. I started off with that first experience. Then from there, I started with younger kids. So I was working with students as young as like 4 years old. We were doing robotics, we were doing Scratch, block coding and different things like that. From that space, I moved into the high school level where I was working with more about like wearable tech. And I got the opportunity to also work with Girls Who Code, where they did like a lot of programs where students were able to kind of create things from code that they could like wear. And then from there, I went into as a full-time high school teacher. And that's how I got into like deep development of curriculum, building curriculum for a whole entire mobile app design class. And then I was like, high school was kind of really hard for me working with the students, also focusing on behavior. And it was hard to make an impact within the tech space as much as I wanted to for people to learn how to do tech teaching high school, because it was like, okay, make sure they're not, talking, or make sure they're not doing this, but also teach them how to, do this. So it was like really hard to do that for me. So that's when I transitioned into adult learning. So I currently work as a software development instructor, teaching adults full stack development tracks where they are able to kind of go into full-time roles as software developers after they finish the programs that I work with.
And there's one component that I want to dive a little bit further into before we talk about Stacked Up Academy and all the great work that
Mhm.
you're doing and support there. The aspect of women, particularly black women, young black women, right? We'll say black girls in terms of going into more of the STEM technology related kind of career pathways and trajectories. We have, of course, heard and kind of seen a lot of the metrics and conversations around how we can support young women getting into these spaces and just like the disparity. And we'd be remiss if we didn't acknowledge that there is something to that. And I've had conversations with a lot of people, especially in the education ed tech space, but even on some of these conversations for the Road to 100, where there is a recognition of that and realizing that we have more work to do there. Can you talk a little bit more about the impact and the importance that you saw and your experience there and how you saw that actually having an impact with regard to that growth of seeing our girls going into these spaces?
Yeah, definitely. I would say, especially within the spaces of a lot of these programs that do focus on girls specifically, or even I currently work for a company in Europe. It's called Coding Black Females, where we also focus on Black women who are older getting into that tech space as well. But I would say it's definitely something that most people don't have the opportunity to kind of go into unless they are exposed to those spaces. When I first started with Black Girls Code, a lot of the students that were in there, their mothers were also in tech. So their mothers probably worked like corporate at Verizon and different things like that. So they had their mothers who were Black women already in those higher spaces. It was very few women that who daughters, their mothers weren't like kind of like in that corporate space or diving into something like that. So I think over time it did grow where more people of maybe like a middle or lower class were able to find out like, oh, this is a program I can put my child in. And that's kind of the difference, especially working with so many programs within coding. With Girls Who Code, it's kind of like a different aspect because it was very more so diverse with the students that we were working with. And a lot of the students were all at different levels. So mom in corporate, mom not in corporate, maybe don't even have a mom or whatever the case may be. They were more so able to outreach a wider dynamic of students to kind of like, hey, we think this would be a really good program. And then also what Girls Who Coach do, they go to schools and they have people that can be ambassadors within the school space and do like an after school program with their programs and different things like that. So that was really something that was able to kind of get those people within those tech spaces. And what I do also notice is that it's really unless you it's like something like if you know you know, and if you're looking for it, because a lot of these things aren't promoted or talked about. And I mean, especially now, I don't really know as far as like how people promote coding or people promote technology in school. But when I first started, there weren't any coding jobs to be a computer science teacher. It took about 3 years out of college where I started to see computer science teacher jobs as full-time jobs and not just like a part-time situation. So now, back then, when that was the case, like a lot of students didn't know about tech or even wanted to do tech. I was working at a school in Brooklyn with young girls, and they were just like, okay, like whatever, like I don't want to do this. Like it was something that was once they couldn't get it, they didn't want to do it anymore. So also just understanding how important it was to learn it was something that was also lacking within that space, because I don't think they understand the importance of tech into right now.